Hello, Hoovians, and welcome back to the third channel. Ding, ding! We're back on the third channel. Woohoo! For another interview. Now, if you're probably wondering, Tom, you've uploaded a lot of videos on this channel lately. Yes, it's because I bulk filmed by accident because I didn't know what format the Inside Number 9 base series was going to be on, so I bulk filmed. I don't know why. Don't ask me. Well, do ask me, but I'll tell you a proper answer. And so we uploaded them as a book, but now we're back, not uploading it as book, and we're no longer doing Tom's riddle of the day because who cares about riddles other than ITV? They care about riddles. They're the only people that care about riddles, and the riddler from DC, but he doesn't exist, so ITV the only one that care about riddles, not me anymore. That was an experiment that went downhill, but we're here doing another wonderful interview. Yes. It's a wonderful interview because I haven't finished eating that dictionary. I'm currently on the E's, the very small corner of the E's, not the top of the E's, not the actual E itself. It's a bit of paper that says what year the dictionary is from, and so we're here today with another one to my guest is best known, very well best known as the host of Relic, the guardian of the museum. It's the one and only Gemma Arrowsmith.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
So we'll start at the very beginning because it's always a good place to start. Julie
It
Andrews once
is.
said, and never said it again because she can no longer sing. How did you get into the world of writing?
That's a really good question. I knew I wanted to be an actor from about the age of sort of 10, 11 when I first saw Red Dwarf, really. And I think I wanted to be when did I decide I wanted to be a writer? Pretty soon after that, because I knew that like being an actor, you're not really in control of a lot. So I
Yeah.
thought if I write as well, then I have some degree of control over my career, such as it is. So yeah, it was around the age of I think 11, that I was sort of aiming at being a comedy actor writer. Yeah, around then.
And do you reckon that it helps having this extra skill as a writer as well as an actor because it means
Yeah.
that you can do multiple things and your career isn't like waiting for one thing. You can do multiple things to keep your career on a steady path.
Oh, I think I used to teach in drama schools, and I always used to say any other string that you've got to your bow so if you're an actor musician, use that. If you're an actor stage manager, use that. It's really, really hard to make your living purely as an actor. Most actors will have some other thing that they do, be it just a regular day job, like waiting on tables, or like writing, teaching, directing. It's incredibly helpful to have other things that you do outside of acting, because something like 2% of actors make their entire living just from acting. It's something like in that sort of area. Yeah, a really, really small number. So you've got to diversify and do lots of other things, I think.
And if you are an actor waiter, it means that you'll be perfect for a waitress because then you can use your waiting skills on stage, and
Yeah, exactly.
that's always handy. And one of the things that you are well known for as I wouldn't say an activist because that's really the worst word for it, but I think it works. You're an activist for the keeping alive the art of sketch shows. And what's it like writing sketch
Yeah.
shows for radio?
Yeah, that's a good activist for keeping sketch shows alive. Okay, so yes, I think you're completely right. I think sketch shows are really, really important. Um, if you look, a lot of people that went on to write some of the best sitcoms, some of the best movies, directing movies like Jordan Peele started in sketch comedy. So Jordan Peele, Jennifer Saunders, John Cleese, all these people started in sketch comedy. It's kind of where you cut your teeth. It's where you learn the basics of writing. I think I've heard sketch comedy referred to as like a sandpit, where you sort of get to play around and try things out. And then you take those lessons you've learned, how to structure a scene, how to sort of keep your writing nice and economical. All of those lessons you learn in sketch comedy, you then take on to your sitcom script, your comedy drama script, your full screenplay. So I think sketch shows are really important for new talent, both writing talent and performing talent. I think, yeah, if Joel Morris has done a brilliant article about the importance of sketch shows, so look that up as well, viewers. But yeah, I think sketch shows are really, really important. And so I complain constantly that there aren't enough of them while working on quite a lot of them at the same time. So it's that sort of the dual nature of man. And the question was what's it like writing on a radio sketch show?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've written on a few and I've script edited a few radio sitcoms. I think they're an absolute delight because radio is where you can do some of your biggest ideas. Just the visuals happen in the mind. There's a wonderful performer called Joyce Grenfell, and she used to say that she preferred radio to television because the pictures are so much better on the radio, which is nice, isn't it? But they're just happening in the listener's mind. So you can do some of your biggest ideas on the radio because you don't have to pay to realize them on the screen. It's a very economical art form. So you can have your big space adventure or your Western or your fantasy, and it's all happening just purely you're conjuring these images through audio, and I think it's a brilliant medium for that. For sketch comedy is classically a really expensive medium, right? Because every 2 to 3 minutes you've got this whole new setup, you've got a new scenario, new location, new costumes, new wigs, hair, makeup, maybe new performers, new extras in the background, so it's really expensive. But on radio, it isn't. You can do all of that stuff for nowhere near as much money. So it's a brilliant medium for sketch comedy, I think. So yeah, every time I've worked on radio sketch shows, it's been an absolute delight because you can go, right, in this, we're going to have, we don't have to set everything just in an office because that's the only location we can afford. We can set this one on Mars. We can set this next sketch on a pirate ship or whatever. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant medium for sketch comedy. And like, yeah, it's lovely writing for radio. And this is why the Big Finish audios have been so successful, is because you can conjure up these very expensive worlds for a fraction of the cost. So it's because it's just all audio, just conjuring it just through the audio medium. So yeah, I think writing sketch shows for radio is immense fun and a really good way to start writing sketch comedy is write it for audio.
Yeah, because I think that if you were when you're making like sketches for TV, you couldn't make a dinosaur sunbathing in Ibiza on TV, but on radio,
Yeah.
you probably couldn't if you couldn't do an impression of a dragon. But otherwise, you could do that because you could pretend you're in Ibiza.
Exactly. You start it off saying, "Oh, a character do some exposition about being in Ibiza. Oh, it's a hot day in Ibiza today, and we're in Ibiza." There you go, done.
And one of the things you've worked on in the last, well, I think I'm gonna say in the last year, but I don't necessarily know when it came out. I only saw it this
Mhm.
year. You could probably explain that. But what was it like working on? It's a very interesting concept for a sketch, and it made me howl with laughter due to its existence. But what was it like working on Deaf Funny?
Oh, I love that show. Okay, so it was Deaf Funny was part funded by Film 4, I think. And it was made by BSL, the British Sign Language Association. BSL Zone it was called. And I was one of the sort of hearing foils for that show. It was really good, and it's a wonderful sort of it was the brainchild of a wonderful writer called Charlie Swinburne, who is fantastic. And all of the cast were deaf or hard of hearing, and but also most of the crew were as well. So we had translators on set who could translate British Sign Language for us hearing people who don't speak BSL. And just like on Goodness Gracious Me, David Lamb was the sort of the white foil of a lot of sketches. It was me and another actor, we were the sort of hearing foil for a lot of sketches. It was such a, there was some brilliant sketches on that show. I got to play some really fun characters. So I got to play a sort of Theresa May type, who was having her speeches mistranslated by someone who didn't know BSL well enough. It was great. It's a really good show. And yeah, just really impressive. They also, yeah, they had the makeup people were deaf. I think a lot of the crew were deaf. It was great. It was and some really funny sketches. So there's a lovely sketch where a bunch of deaf people are discussing the hearing, and they're saying, why do they all have different languages? They should just have one language that they all talk. Because a lot of people say that about deaf people, like, what? So there's BSL and ASL as well. Why don't they just talk one language? It was really nice kind of turning that on its head, going, why do these hearing people have all these different spoken languages? It's very inefficient. They should just have one spoken language. Great. It's really, really satirical. I loved that show. It was really good.
And I think it worked well because it shows that sketch comedy works well no matter what the barrier is. It's like no
Oh
matter
yeah.
what which it is, the sketches work and those sketches are deaf funny compared to another problem which I'll mention in a minute. These sketches actually worked really well because there's like for your politician character with the myth hearing that's happened before, so things have happened
Yeah. Yeah.
and it helps because it shows that even though deaf people are different to hearing people, it means that they can still take the mickey out of hearing people, and it still works.
Yeah.
It's still generically funny, and for people that aren't deaf or can't speak BSL, it helps because there's still there's like subtitles, so you can still follow along, and
Yeah.
it makes it inclusive for everyone to watch, and it is one of the in the top 10 things that I randomly discovered that I almost wet myself laughing in every second. Watched it all in one go and I just could not stop laughing. It was hilarious.
Such a good, yeah, it was really well written, and Charlie Swinburne's great. I did some script editing for him on a different project later down the line, and he had a really interesting way of writing the scripts because you've got most people are going to be speaking BSL, and then but some people will be speaking spoken English, and so in the scripts he would put any spoken English in bold. So the regular just regular text was going to be signed, and then if it was in bold it would be spoken out loud. It's really sort of nice, and so he set that rule for himself at the beginning, because how do you render that? How do you render the difference between spoken English and BSL on the page? So he decided anything in bold, which was unusual because it was mostly it was signed. Anything in bold was spoken aloud in spoken English, and regular text was in BSL. It's kind of interesting though, isn't it? Sort of go, oh, how do we've got two languages being spoken. How do we put that in a script? It's quite interesting. So yeah, I then later did some script editing for him. So he was saying, right, this is how I write, this is how I render the difference between BSL and spoken English in a script. Yeah, do seek his stuff out. He's really fantastic, I think, Charlie Swinburne.
And so if you have a Sky Q, just talking to your remote, Deaf Funny, and it'll appear straight away, and you can watch all the episodes on the Sky Q. That's not well. I thought it was a Facebook advert because Ben Rufus Green just appeared as a Facebook
Yeah,
advert. I'm like, what on earth is he doing as a Facebook advert? And then I found the
yeah.
and then it just got funny. And there's another sketch show that seemed to appear a few years ago that wasn't as good as Death Funny because it had Donald Trump speaking Scottish Gaelic and his brother lived in Scotland. So the whole sketch was that Donald
What
Trump,
was that?
yeah, I can't remember what it was called. It was on BBC Alba, and it was where
Okay.
it's where all of it's in Gaelic. Other than there's one sketch where a bloke's complaining that there's a channel in Gaelic that shouldn't exist. And then you
Right.
have just Donald Trump just ringing up, speaking Gaelic and having a conversation with his
I
brother.
don't remember this at all.
Well,
Oh, wait,
like
when was this?
it was not. I think it was like not last year, it was a few years ago. But there was two
Okay.
series of it, and I don't think anyone watched it because they're not as weird as me just watching. It like just recommended to me. I'm thinking, what's this? And it was a whole sketch show just in
Right.
Scottish Gaelic, and it was just
Right.
bizarre because why would Donald Trump know Gaelic in the first place? And why would he
I'm
have
gonna look that up. That sounds interesting.
and he had a brother in Scotland. So the whole thing was that he was Scottish and he was related to his brother and they were just phoning
Right.
each other up going, Oh, I messed up America again.
Right, I'm going to look this up because Donald Trump did open that golf course in Scotland, so he does have links to
Yeah,
Scotland. I'm going to look that up. That sounds interesting. That was on Alba, was it?
it was on BBC Alba, and
Okay.
it's just bizarre. And moving away slightly from sketch comedy, but we will return to it because you always have to return, because that's how a reoccurring the sketch happens. Um,
Yeah.
what was it like working on one of the programs that always sticks in my mind? And when I think about different sketches from this program, I'm calling them sketches, even though they all link together. I do remember vividly where they were and what place they were all sat in the exact room when you walk into the actual place where it was filmed. What was it like working on DNN? Definitely not Newsround.
I love that show. So DNN ran for 2 series on Children's BBC, and it was like a spoof news program. Um, and that has one of the best casts that I've ever worked with. There was 10 in the cast, so quite a big. That's quite a hefty cast, and we all got on so famously. Like, it was like that. We still have a WhatsApp group for DNN. It's fantastic group of people. So Carrie Lloyd, Susan Harrison, Sule Rimi, Mawan Rizwan, like amazing cast. Sam Fletcher, like everyone. And we were in London, it was filmed up in Salford. So we were going back and forth on the train. And there's not a single person in that cast that I wouldn't be delighted to sit next to on a 2-hour train journey and chat to, because everyone in that cast was solid gold, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I loved working on that show. It should have got a third. I think it should have got at least a third series. I was really gutted it didn't get the third series because it deserved it. And it was brilliant. It was, I mean, I remember watching The Day to Day when it first came out in '94. That's a spoof news program, and hosted by Chris Morris, and had this brilliant cast. So it felt quite exciting to be doing sort of spoof news, but for kids. We thought, oh, this is gonna be like The Day to Day. And it really was. It was brilliant. And yeah, so I played Nellie Osmond, who was sort of a very tightly wound news reporter, um, with my own hair in the first series, and which was a nightmare. So they gave me a wig. I begged them for a wig in the second series, so it would just stay. I thought that Nellie Osmond is such a sort of tightly wound character that her hair needed to be solid, and so I thought, please go have a wig. And I wanted the wig to get bigger every week, and but they said that would be too expensive to do. But anyway, what was lovely about that show is they mostly chose sort of writer performers, people who were improvisers, so we had a lot of say over what the characters look like, and we would have a lot of influence over. So I think I wrote some bits for my character, but for other characters as well, because they were using comedy people from the circuit, and which was lovely. So we had a really lovely mix, but everyone was a really good improviser. And so yeah, it felt like we had a lot of ownership over that. So it wasn't just a case of like you come in and you given script, you just do what's written, and then we had a lot of influence. So yeah, that was brilliant, that show. So much fun. I mean, and also just I love shows where you get to play a whole bunch of characters that look incredibly different from one another. So I mean, at one point I was playing, I think it was because all of the fellas were off filming, and they needed a character who was a guy who had invented reusable toilet paper, and so I played him with a moustache. And I decided to play it like a sort of Reece Shearsmith character. So I'm just like, okie dokie, I'm like that, and it was so good, and I looked so different from all of the other characters. So I loved that show. I love any show where you get to really transform and play a whole bunch of different characters. I'm like cranking out lots of different accents. It was great. It was a really fun show. It's a shame that it's not. I don't think it's on iPlayer. You have to sort of really seek it out and find little clips on YouTube. It's How did you find it? Did you find it on YouTube?
Well, I watched it when it first came out.
Oh,
'Cause
did you? Oh, it was
I
solid show that.
and that well, it was I was slightly older. I think I was it came out when I was slightly older, so I'm 20, so I wasn't that old, but I was slightly older than when some of the other programs that I'm going to mention later came out. So
Because it was 10 years ago now, wasn't it? So you'd have been about 10.
yeah, so it was
Um,
I remember that because I've been to Salford several times since, and so I remember a certain scene that I point out and go, well, such a thing happened there, and it was right over there, and it's just like vivid memories, and it's really sad that it didn't make it to DVD. But if you
Oh yeah.
if you're in university or in a college that has access to boxer broadcasts, then it's on there. So if you just search in DNN or pretty much any TV program from a certain bandwidth, it's like if you type in a really obscure one, it won't.
Yeah, yeah.
Like DNN and Raven and all them lot are on there. So if you just type in DNN, you won't know which episode you're watching because they don't organise it
Yeah.
properly. You'll be able to find every episode that has been rebroadcast and broadcast in the first place. So
Yeah.
it is available to watch that.
I've got DVDs of it, but that's we were given as cast, we were given these sort of nice DVDs. But yeah, if you can, there are some clips. I think there are some clips even still on the CBBC website if you hunt them down. But yeah, it would have been great if it had got a proper DVD release. It was a really brilliant show. And some really good writers on it as well. There's people like Jack Bernhardt and Tom Neenan, like really good comedy writers who are, very successful. So who were writing just sketches for our little sketch show. Oh, God, it was brilliant, that show. I love that show. Thank you for a trip down memory lane. I loved working on that.
Yeah, and one of the other things you've worked on that was in the realm of DNN has been in the top 10 greatest things that exists and should have been released on DVD. But it is like scattered all over the internet because people upload these things, and you can find websites that are dedicated to it by some company that like made like an inch of the logo, like a millimeter of the logo. They made a whole website based on it. What was it like working on Ministry of Curious Stuff?
Oh, that was great. Yeah, working with Vic Reeves. So sadly I couldn't do the second series because I was doing the first series of DNN, which was a wonderful show to work on. But yeah, I did the first series of Ministry of Curious Stuff with my friend Tom Golding and a brilliant writer producer called George Sawyer. And the three of us were sort of the sort of sketch players with Vic Reeves. And yeah, it was filmed at Elstree in the film studios up in Elstree. And yeah, it was brilliant. I remember it was like breakneck speed because I think it was something like there were 13 episodes and we had 14 days to film. It was something like that. Which meant it was just an absolute breakneck speed, like here are your lines. Yeah, but I remember playing a lot of characters. I think I was but you were just in character for about 30 minutes and then you'd be on to the next sketch. So I remember playing a pirate, and they didn't have any boots for this pirate, so this costume woman like running down Elstree High Street going, can we find anything that looks anything like boots for a pirate? And I put them on and I sort of did this pirate for a few minutes on camera, and then it was like right on to the next thing. So it was like a blur. I don't oddly remember a lot about it because it was so fast. Everything was so quick that I don't remember a lot. I remember Vic Reeves being absolutely lovely. And sort of very giving as well, like just because he's such a sort of dynamo of a performer, and I always get very intimidated by people like that, but he was so lovely and really nice and just very sort of down to earth and sort of obviously amazing. He was like a hero of mine, and I have been lucky enough to work with a bunch of heroes. So on Tracy Ullman's show I wrote a sketch with Jeremy Dyson and from the League of Gentlemen, and that was a massive thing. I've been very lucky that they've been nice as well. I haven't had one of those terrible things when you meet your heroes and they're really horrible. So I've met heroes and they've been really lovely, and Vic Reeves was one of them. But yeah, oddly, I have very few stories about Ministry of Curious Stuff because I remember so little about it. I worked with Jack Carroll on that, who's fantastic, obviously. And I mean, he would have been, how old would he have been? Like 14 or something like that on that show. And he's incredible. Like I knew then he was like, you're amazing, you're going to be massive, and as he is. So he just won a BAFTA. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And Ministry of Curious Stuff is one of those things. It's where when you see these performers like Vic Reeves, who generally don't work in the children's
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
this one, if you compare it to the other things it doesn't, which is apart from the new stuff he does, which is painting birds, but it just doesn't feel out of place. The only thing that feels weird about it is if
Yeah.
Mortimer's not running about somewhere, but it just
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't feel out of place for his character. So Vic Reeves, it feels like something that he would have done regardless of who's it for, and it just works
Yeah.
very well because it includes real children's questions, but they just don't get answered in a serious manner. Like in the first, because I rewatched the first episode the other day, and a dinosaur just appeared out of nowhere, but it was just a bloke in a cardboard costume, looking like nothing like a dinosaur, but just pretending to be a dinosaur in a little bit of a boogie. It's like, what?
What is this?
Yeah,
It's such a good show.
insanity.
I seem to remember I did a dance with him and where we're both whistling, I think. I don't remember what that was or like what question was being answered.
And I don't think I remember that either, but it's like it's interesting because you try and a lot of children's media of its ilk, they have a lot of children in it, but then they don't decide to answer the children's questions at all. They just skirt around it just so that it's there as an element. It's like
Yeah.
the Hoops is another good one where they have like children in it, but then they just like
Yeah.
know what the children have said and just crack on with their own thing and just go, well, we'll come back to that at the end. With it,
Yeah.
the set just looks amazing. It probably wasn't actual draws. It probably just like paintings. But the set looks so amazing that like no other program could ever recreate. Or they probably could, but it probably wouldn't have been as good. But I think that it's interesting to see that the array of talent that's in it, and they've all gone on
Yeah.
to do other things like I'm gonna say his middle name wrong probably, but Tiger Drew Honey from Outnumbered was also in it, and that's like
Yeah, he was.
he hasn't done that much other than he's done a few things, but not as much. So it's like it was a nice surprise to see him playing
Yeah, he was very good.
the massive moustache for no apparent reason, just hanging about. And one of the other things you've done that is heralded as one of the greatest because it was on BBC One and CBC. What was it like hosting Relic, the Guardians of the Museum?
Oh, what a great job. Yeah, that was ages ago now. Relic was, I think it was pitched to me as like Nightmare and a bit like Nightmare, which I watched when I was growing up, and The Crystal Maze and those sorts of game shows. And it was part of a season on the BBC. It was on the main show was on Radio 4 and it was called The History of the World in 100 Objects. And this was the sort of children's uh sister show to that, and it was set in the British Museum and it was 13 episodes and each episode dealt with a different relic from around the British Museum, and I was playing a ghostly tour guide called, what was her name, oh my goodness, oh my God, it's so long ago. It's all got I'm gonna look it up. That's terrible. I can't believe it's been so long that I've forgotten the character's name. Anyway, she would take these little teams of kids around the British Museum. We filmed it on Sunday night into Monday morning. And because that was the longest time that the British Museum is closed. And so it was like filmed in the middle of the night. It was really exhausting. And so what would happen is the kids we'd go around with the kids and they'd be asked questions about various artifacts around the British Museum. Then they would go and we'd have to film all my reverse shots because it was like we're talking like it's 1, 2 in the morning by this stage. So and I'm in very, very high heels. Agatha was her name. It's just come back. Agatha was her name. And I'd be in this grey makeup. It's 2 in the morning running around the British Museum. Oh, and in some places in the British Museum, I've got these incredibly high heels on. And they said this floor of the British Museum in this area is very, very delicate. Please don't put your heels down. So I'm on sort of tiptoes trying not to damage the floor of the British Museum. It was brilliant, that show. And it was, I think, I understand, quite an expensive show for children's BBC, which is why we won a BAFTA but didn't get a second series. So I can't remember which way around that came, but I know it was like 1 week then the next. So it was either we won a BAFTA and then the following week we were cancelled, or it was cancelled and then the following week it won a BAFTA. I can't remember which way around, but it was one of them. But yeah, it was a very expensive show, apparently. So I understand it was an expensive show for children's BBC. So it didn't go further than a series, which is such a shame because I think it looks gorgeous and it was incredible fun to do. And that was also filmed at Elstree, the games were. But not the film studios. That was at the TV studios in Elstree. So yeah, so I should say I love the history of television so much. That's why I'm obsessed with what studio is it filmed in, and I love all of that. I love the sort of history of broadcasting. So, for me, walking around the TV studios at Elstree was very, very exciting. So I love all things like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
It is one of those shows where you watch it, and then it's one of those things where you might not remember the title of it, but because of the imagery, it's
Yeah.
ingrained in you. It's probably just me this, but I am sort of one of those people that remember things that are very much no one else thought of 30 odd years. And it's ingrained in your brain, and you just remember. You just remember what happens. You might not remember the exact details of which child's in what costume, but you just remember all of it
This
because
is a good show.
it
Yeah.
was because that era of CBC, there's a lot of other shows that seemingly were a lot weirder, like Fee Fi Fo Yum, which was
Yeah.
the giant, and that was weird. That was on the plain tale of why on earth does this exist? But other shows are just made, and it just Series Egypt was at its best.
It
It
was a really strong era, yeah, for
was
sure. I think you're right.
because at the same time they were showing shows like Paradise Cafe, which was an Australian thing where people could see dead people through a fish pond. It was like a mini fish tank, and every time they looked at it, there was some sort of zombie coming to kill them. And then when they looked at it, it was just a woman walking towards them, which was that's Australia for you. There's always beaches. And a lot of programs exist that you wouldn't think would get made now
Mm.
because the budget of series has gone down.
Yeah,
Massively.
yeah, I think
And
you're
series
right.
now just repeating a lot of shows that are on other channels at the exact same
Mhm.
time. So you can watch a program called We Bare Bears at 5 o'clock on Series C and 5 o'clock on Cartoon Network. And it's
Right.
the same episode. If you watch it carefully, it probably is the exact same episode that's airing. And that's quite sad. And one of the things that
Yeah.
is being advocated to come back because the person that plays the character still works in Series C. What would they like appearing on one of the weirdest yet beautiful programs that's still getting its music sang at festivals today? Because, well, the bloke now does DJing as his various characters. What would they like appearing on Hacker Time?
Ah, Hackathon was fantastic. Yeah, it was brilliant. There's so many talented people working on that show. So, um, I got to work with uh, Phil Fletcher, loads of these brilliant puppeteers that I sort of still know. So there's Phil Fletcher, who does Hacker, obviously, and then Warwick Brownlow Pike, who did Oucho, and does Dodge and things like that. These brilliant puppeteers that I got to work with the first time on, I think either Transmission Impossible or Hacker Time. I can't remember where I first met them, but yeah, Hacker Time was fantastic, and I did a couple of things on it, but the main thing was we did a spoof western called The Mild West, which number one, how good is that? Instead of the Wild West, the Mild West, that's so good. And it was filmed in this amazing western sort of it's a film set. It's in Kent, and it's the main thing for me was it was where they recorded Gunman of the Apocalypse, the episode of Red Dwarf. And so I was beside myself. I didn't know this until we pulled up, and I opened the door and looked out and I went, it was the first thing I noticed, that this is where they filmed the Red Dwarf episode Gunman of the Apocalypse. And I did not shut up about it all day. It was constant. So all day I was so distracted while we were recording it because I was going, oh, this would have been where Danny John Jules would have filmed this, and this is where Chris Barry would have done it all day, absolutely constantly. It was so exciting. It was a gorgeous set. It was so exciting to be on that set. It was freezing, as I remember, because I think it was like February when we filmed it. But yeah, brilliant. And Ed Petrie as the sort of tall, dark stranger that comes in with a big moustache, and it was really funny as well. That script, terrible. I can't remember who wrote it. I think it might have been several people that contributed, but it was brilliant. There's a great joke. It had like really quick whip pan cutaways, like 30 Rock, and this is a brilliant bit in the opening 2 minutes, which is says they're looking for a new sheriff. I'm playing a woman called Mrs. Goldmine, and she's saying, oh well, we all remember what happened to the last one, and then whip pan cuts away to a coffin being nailed shut. It says, that's right, he became a coffin maker. Such a good joke, so good. It's fun. It's really quick sort of jokes like that. I thought it was really well written. So that's why it's terrible I can't remember who wrote it, but yeah, a brilliant show. And I think all of those Mild Wests are still up on the CBBC website, so you can find those. But yeah, brilliant show, Hacker Time.
It's like garnered a lot of fans because Phil
Yeah.
now does DJing as his various characters, and
Yeah, I saw it the other day. He was doing
yeah,
his
and
Hacker.
he was singing the ending song, and this crowd they were like, "What? Hang on, what's going on here?" They're all you can't see them clearly enough, but you can see just about a few people mouthing along. They're probably singing, because it's that it's that like bizarre of a content. It was really well known. It's like it was on early in the morning. It was like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so when you're off for half term, my vivid memory of that, you're off for half term and it's on and every day and you watch it every day. And I remember being in places because it did reruns all the time. I remember being
Yeah, yeah.
in the behind the bar at a golf clubhouse. Don't ask why I was at a golf clubhouse because I barely know that answer. And they went, "Oh, could you just pop the telly on?" And Hacker Time was on. So I'm sat in some dingy, like not dingy, but like a dark back area of this golf club where no one else is watching Hacker Time. And no one, everyone else is playing golf or something. I was like, I'm not a fan of golf. But my grandparents are very keen golf players, so I was with them, and I was just sat there watching Hacker Time, and it's like all you can hear is everyone going, and me just laughing my head off at like bizarre thing. And that show was very relevant of its time because each sketch, when they did the massive like episodical sketches, were all relevant to one thing or another. Like they did
Yeah,
Lost
yeah.
and Found and Lost Again, which was a reference to the Canadian program Lost and Found, which was about a music studio. As a hacker just had a massive long wig on, and they kept on
That's
losing.
great.
Instead of playing music, he would just lose things because he lost something again.
That's so good. I love that.
It's just, and that's why hacker is such a popular character because he
Yeah.
can put his hand to anything. And I think I remember Phil saying once and he's trying to get Hacker Time back on TV because
Oh,
it
good. Yeah.
disappeared, and he's got it on DVD like you got with DNN. He's got it on DVD.
Yeah.
No one else does, and he makes everyone jealous about it. He tries to make people jealous. He has access to all archive footage of everything he's done, and everyone else just has to watch it on YouTube or on the CBC website by typing in the name of the program, and then it just appears. And one of the other things you've appeared in as of recent in the last year, what was it like appearing in one episode of the greatest TV program of all time, Doctor Who?
It was brilliant. So I'm genuinely a big Doctor Who fan. Have been since I was a kid. So it was a big deal. And it was also when the audition comes through and it was a self-tape, I was going, oh please let me get this one. This one's like this would be massive. Even though it's like it's that little small part, but a good part, small but a good part. You go, please, this would be a big deal for me. So I'm friends with Dan Starkey, who's Strax, and it's so lovely going to his place and seeing that he's got all these like loads of little Sontarans. It's like because you go, oh man, it's so nice when you meet someone who it clearly meant a lot to them to have got this part. And it's more than just like, it's a part that I'm an actor, I play lots of roles. It's like this part really matters, and that's definitely Dan, and it's definitely me as well, because I thought, being part of the Whoniverse, because I'd auditioned years ago for a really good part in an episode of Sarah Jane Adventures, and didn't get it. I think because I was too short. That's speculation on my part. But also, I was shorter than the people in. I was meant to be an adult, and I was shorter in it than the people who were playing kids in it. So I think it's because I was too short. That's speculation, but still. So I didn't get it, and I did a good job as well, and it was a good audition. I didn't get it, and I thought, and years later, now's my opportunity to sort of get into the Whoniverse. And so yeah, it was a really big deal. But as soon as I read the part, I thought, I know I can, this is something I can do something with. It's a fun little role. That, you know, there are small roles and there are small roles. There are small roles that you can't do a whole lot with, because they're functional. And then there are small roles that you can do loads with. And this was one of those. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And yeah, got it straight off the back of a self-tape. So didn't have to do a recall, didn't have to do an in-person, got it straight off the back of a self-tape, which is so unusual. And lovely. It was great. And yeah, it was brilliant job. I loved it.
And it's one of those things where no matter how big your part is you could be inducted for 4 seconds and you could still milk it for years to come. That's what's perfect about Doctor Who. It's one of those things where you're in it, and then you might not get to come back in it again, but you do get to do a and you really do. Some people are like got so much money and they quit whatever they were doing because they can just ride the circuit of convention. There's a new convention every week, and so many people, and that's why Doctor Who is one of the best programs ever, because people appreciate every single act. Like
Yeah.
a big like blockbuster like Game of Thrones type thing. You probably don't care about the mini man that was like in it for 4 seconds and he was like halfway down the troop killing someone. You probably never care about them, but with Doctor Who, you care about that person.
Yeah.
You know who they are and you want to meet them, and no matter what they've done, you still appreciate them, and that's why Doctor Who is fantastic, because it makes everyone feel appreciated, no matter how big, small
That's
the role
nice.
was.
Yes.
It makes everyone feel appreciated, because they
Yeah.
get to do something that no one thought they could do. Because it's like most actors, dreams are to be the Doctor, but you know that that's unrealistic. Well, unless you get cast as the Doctor, then that's really realistic. But
Really realistic. Yeah.
but like being in it, even in any capacity, is still achieving a dream that
Yeah.
has been there for since like the first time you ever set eyes on a monster that should not exist, like the Candyman, with a cane on a sea, should not exist. There's, there's mileage out there. You can get so much out of that, like comedy wise. You can
Yeah.
pick out of it like it's no end, because it just looks just like really weird. It looks like edible. It's edible. And no monster should look edible. It should look scary, not like some food that you want to just eat.
True. Completely true.
And one of the other things you've done within the world of Doctor Who, uh, which is which I've kind of spent slightly too much money on, as in like I was originally supposed to have a line there in chronological order, but because there's too many, I've had to stack them on top of each other. What's it like writing for a Doctor Who Big Finish story?
It's really good. Yeah, I did a Seventh Doctor, an ace, brilliant. One of my favorite companions, and yeah, then I did one of the Paternoster Gang series, and Missy as well, which is brilliant. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing the Paternoster Gang and Missy were great because you're you it's sort of like you're a little bit freer to create things because it's not sort of wedded to the sort of actual Doctor Who franchise. It's a little bit freer because it's like, I think it's from the worlds of Doctor Who, I think is the phrase that they use. So it's like so you're a little bit freer. The rules are a little bit more relaxed. And on the Missy series, they've really, I mean, the amount that they put out and the quality they managed to keep up is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? And yeah, it was incredibly fun. And also knowing you're writing for Michelle Gomez in the Missy series, God, this is so exciting. And she's so funny, and she can deliver a line like nobody else. So that was great. Yeah, it was really good. And I got to work with John Dorney, who's obviously a brilliant, very prolific Big Finish writer, and he script edited for me. And yeah, he's incredible, an incredible writer. I mean, I always go, he should be writing on the main show. He should be writing for telly. That's what I think. I think John Dorney's fantastic. So yeah, he was brilliant and offers fantastic insight as to sort of how you can tweak your script to just sort of take it up a notch. And yeah, it was really fun. I didn't get to meet. Oh, who did I went into the recording of the Paternoster Gang, but I think Michelle Gomez. She might have been in the US at the time, so I think she might have recorded it down the line. So I didn't get to meet her. But one day I've got her. Here we go. I'm wearing a t-shirt with her on at the moment. So yeah, yeah, it was a real fun, and that was my sort of first, because I had not got into the Sarah Jane Adventures, so that was sort of the first actual getting into the Whoniverse was writing on the Big Finish, 3 Big Finish audios. So yeah, and then getting the little part in Doctor Who itself was the icing on the cake after that.
And Big Finish in recent years, as in since Russell T Davies took back over, it's been really much important because Scott Hancock writes and does a lot for Big Finish, and it's nice to see that these people that are really, really talented, like anyone that can write a Big Finish story, no matter what it is, no matter whether or not it's like Space Cop or whatever, can are like proper in the great geniuses, because it is such a hard thing to do, because all these franchises, not just Doctor Who, you've got a pressure to, if you mess up one, like if you do like a Doctor, if you mess up one small detail, someone out there's going to nitpick that and go, that's not right. And sometimes it doesn't matter, because like sometimes you can like just adjust it and say, well, it's because of this, that, and the other. But there's sometimes where if you accidentally make one mistake, and do you reckon that made it more nervous when writing for the Seventh Doctor, because you had to make sure that detail was there and you didn't mess up anything just in case something was ruined later down the line?
I know exactly what you mean. I think that you definitely feel the sort of weight of responsibility, because you're going, I'm going to be writing things that Sylvester McCoy is going to be saying. The Sylvester McCoy that I watched when I was a kid. So you feel the sort of weight of history on your shoulders. So like there's a long history of Doctor Who in my family. So my mother remembers watching the very first episode go out. My mum loves science fiction, so she remembers watching the very first episode go out. She always used to say, like, oh, she was go, oh, Gemma, the Celestial Toymaker, it's been lost. It was so good. Like like there are no episodes. Well, there's one episode that's left, and she said, oh, it was brilliant. So I remember watching the Survival. I remember watching that. It was like the last episode before it was cancelled when I was a kid, and so then it was cancelled like right about the time that you'd be getting into it as a child. So I remember watching repeats on UK Gold. But then I was at drama school when the 2005 show The New Who began, and I remember going home the weekend specifically to watch Rose with my mum, because it was like, oh yeah, we've got to watch that together because Doctor Who is important to us. So yeah, you do definitely, when then you're years later, you are writing in your script, interior TARDIS, that you do feel the sort of the weight of all of those years of history, personal history, and sort of cultural history. You definitely feel it. You go, this is this is the Seventh Doctor. This is the Doctor that I was watching in the 80s. So yeah, I think you definitely feel the weight of responsibility, but not so much that I think it stymies you completely. But you are like, you've got to take this seriously because this is an important show. It's important to a lot of people. A lot of people really care about this. So yeah.
And that's why when you do these like spin-off, because they are tied, like the Paternoster Gang is tied to Doctor Who because they've appeared in it, but because it's more of it's not technically a Big Finish original, but it is a Big Finish own spin-off, and because them can return to TV when they want, because none of them are dead, and all these and canon, which technically does exist but doesn't exist, and then who you're asking at what point in time you're asking.
Yeah.
And I've made it I've made several arguments why canon should and shouldn't exist in several different forms. But I think that patriotic caring
Yeah,
is helpful to show that this franchise can still be creative. You don't have to be tied down to make sure
yeah.
every that's great. You need to keep some details in so that you know that they're the exact same characters that were in the TV world. And do you reckon that that helped because you know what the characters were like on TV and there's other audios to play off, so you know that where the characters are at that moment in time, you can then go off on your own tangent from there because they're already built up and they've already got some personality and connection together.
Yeah, I think like knowing it's sort of a different job, isn't it? Like so there's I often say because I run these sort of sketch writing courses, and I often say there are two sort of strings to your bow when you're a writer. There's finding your voice, like you're often told, like find your own voice. What is your voice? What do you want to say? But then there's also being able to slot into an existing show, so being able to pick up characters like I was saying John Donnie does so well. Like he's incredible at writing for an existing IP. He's incredible at that. And that's a real skill all of its own, being able to go, right, here are the set of characters, here are the parameters, and you can pick it up and take it from there. And I think it's just knowing what those parameters are. So yeah, you're absolutely right. On the Paternoster gang, it's like here are the set of characters you've got to work with. Here's what they're like. This is where we're sort of sending this series of stories. But aside from that, you can do whatever you want. I also think it's brilliant working with those actors because they're really funny and good improvisers. Dan Starkey's an amazing improviser. So and he knows that. He knows Strax like inside out and backwards as well. So I remember I was at the recording of those, and he said, like I'd written something like drat at the beginning of one of it, and he went, oh, can I say curses instead? And I went, 100% yes, yes you can. But because he knows that character so well. I remember that when I first met Dan Starkey, I went, okay, I won't immediately, because this was before I'd done those Big Finish audios, and it was before I'd done Doctor Who. So I'm like, okay, I won't immediately leap on to talking about Doctor Who. I think it was at an improv gig or something like that. I'll let him mention Doctor Who first, and then I'll the floodgates will open. And so then he did. He did. Like hours later, he mentioned Doctor Who, and I went, okay, and I sort of burst. I burst, and I just went, okay. My favorite thing that you did as Strax was a series of adverts, like Christmas ads, where you were singing like Christmas songs, but then you would put a Strax spin on it. So you'd say, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had a very shiny nose. It was a tactical disadvantage because I could punch him in the dark. Like, and his eyes lit up, and he went, "I improvised those. They were all improv. I improvised that." And a friendship was begun. But yeah, it was like I have to keep a lid on how much of a dork I am. I have to keep it in check.
Yeah, because Dan Starkey is both amazing as Strax, and then amazing when you see him doing other things. Like he was,
Yeah, he's incredible.
I can't remember how many, because he was in a few series of the weird, like trying to replicate children's sketches of old, but he was weirdly funny in Class Dismissed,
Oh, he's good in that. Yeah,
which
he's
was
so good in that.
weird because one of the characters kept on. She was a cookery teacher. She kept on farting every time she did anything, and then that always, when I watched that, always reminded me of the "Sorry I Got No Head" sketch. Every time she said blueberry, she would fart, and then
Yeah,
and then obviously by the end of it, everyone would be on the floor knocked out because it was that bad of a smell because the hair was going all over the shit. But a lot of that works as
yeah, that was Anna Crilly, wasn't it? I remember that. Yeah.
and a lot of things like because a lot of sketches are like link up in the end because they're all trying to say, "Oh, do you remember sketches of this year?" And you remember these type of things. Well, here's like a modern twist in it. And do you reckon that modern sketches such as Class Dismissed, Please Like, or is it Big Fat Like? I think he was called, and all those. Do you reckon that they're trying to keep the original format of sketches alive whilst trying to add a new twist onto it? Because Big Fat Like is about the internet age and what
Mm.
happened. Do you reckon that sketches are going towards trying to emulate old sketches, but trying to keep the nuances enough to make it relevant to a new audience?
No, it's a good question. I think if you can get a sketch show green lit, at all, that's an enormous achievement, right? On TV in particular. Um, the Vogue sketch shows are not in at the moment, and which is such a shame because I think, like I said at the beginning, it's like where you begin is in sketch shows. So if you get rid of sketch shows, there's sort of the few things that you need as a first stepping stone in TV is that you need a sketch show, you need a sort of comedy playhouse kind of pilot season, and you need something like Play for Today for drama, right? So that those are the shows that used to exist. You have your sketch show for sketches, you have comedy playhouse, which is where things like Steptoe started, and then you have Play for Today, which is like one-off dramas that could spark something and go on to be a longer series. But if you don't have any of those, like where is the first rung of the ladder? Like you just take away the first rung of the ladder. I'm not saying that there are no first rungs on the ladder, but they're just getting cut and cut and cut back. So on the radio, there used to be a 15-minute play at the end of Woman's Hour, and that's gone. That's been cut, and they sort of celebrated going, Woman's Hour is now an extra 15 minutes. You go, well, that's an interesting way of saying we're cutting the 15-minute drama. So yeah, it's those beginning steps, those sort of opportunities that not targeted, but like helped young new writers, people get those first steps on the ladder. They're just getting cut to ribbons. I think it's such a shame. So your original question was, do you think the sort of new sketch shows are emulating sketch shows in the past? It's like, well, there aren't many new sketch shows, and so I think there are not many of those opportunities around. So yeah, if you do manage to get your sketch show over the line and you get it greenlit, you're going to put your own new modern spin on a sketch format. So for example, if you're doing like a list sketch, like the sort of cheese shop sketch in Monty Python, you'll be doing your own list sketch. You'll by very nature of the fact that you are a person walking around in the modern day, you will have your own unique modern spin on those old classic formats. I don't think it's a question of like sort of trying to put a modern spin on it. It naturally will happen. You will there are sketch formats that just work, and I have courses that I teach in sort of how to structure your sketch and so on. That format, that structure will always work, and you will naturally find yourself reacting to the modern world and putting a modern spin on those old classic formats. I think it will happen naturally.
Yeah, and I think that as of recent memory, and I think like every time there's a new sketch I do watch. I mean, BBC Scotland are very good at producing.
Yes, they are.
Oh, I think it was like last week they did one about the Euros where it's like where it's just it was a selection of well everyone in it was Scottish comedy royalty. So it's
Yeah,
every single
yeah,
person had either done something amazing or in the middle of doing amazing things. Like Grado, for instance, is in Two Doors
yeah,
Down,
yeah,
and that was you didn't have to be a football fan to watch it because they were technically wasn't all about football. So they did sketches where there was a marriage about to divorce. They were at the divorce place, and then they had like Scottish fans come in singing chants to try and get them to get back together. And then they end up getting back together, and they all end up chanting off, or someone's about to die, and then they bring them back to life by doing a football chant.
nice, yeah,
And it works really well. And then they do Queen and the New Year, and I think the Scottish comedy because of sketch shows and all these like
yeah,
all the big heavy hitters in the Scottish comedy scene are really behind sketch shows. I think it's
yeah,
I'm gonna say his last name wrong, but it's Greg Hepford. I'll say his last name wrong. He is like in every sketch show that BBC Scotland makes.
yeah.
He is like, other than being an advocate for Scottish whiskey based off his own sitcom, he's very good at keeping in. And do you reckon that like do you reckon that the sketches are staying alive because there is certain people like yourself like trying to say keep on doing sketch shows, keep on making them, and trying to make even if it's just a one-off, trying to make sure that they get out there. Do you reckon then that's helpful in a way?
Yeah, I think you're completely right about BBC Scotland. I think BBC Wales as well are doing brilliant things, putting out really good sitcoms and sketch shows. We've got, I mean, the Scots in Scotland I thought was really good, and the Tuckers, which is BBC Wales, like really good sitcoms. So yeah, I think you're completely right. That it's there'll always be good stuff. I think I really believe things will come around again. So at the moment, sketch shows aren't in vogue. They're expensive. They're a risk. So when budgets get cut, anything that's risky is the first to go. Comedy by its very nature is risky. I think people get really annoyed at comedy in the way they don't with other genres. So like if it doesn't make you laugh, you feel left out and you feel like, how dare this not be funny? How dare this claim it's funny? So for example, I think I've heard that comedy and horror are the two sort of genres where you want a very specific reaction from the audience, and it's a defined reaction. Like if comedy doesn't make you laugh, it has failed. If horror doesn't scare you, it has failed. Whereas drama, it's a bit more nebulous, isn't it? What constitutes a successful drama? You don't have to cry in order for it to be successful, and you can always go, well, this is, I was a bit confused and unsettled. Yeah, that's what we were going for. Whereas comedy is like, if I didn't laugh, it has failed. It's not successful. So because it's got that risk factor, I think comedy is often the first thing to go when budgets get cut. It's scary, it's risky. You have to do a lot of comedies before you get the successful one. So there will be failure. I think that's the thing, that there's such a fear of failure in the industry. I think there's a really good speech by Stephen Fry that he did at BAFTA, which is about a fear that pervades the industry, like a terror of having a failure. And the fact is, like, you have to occasionally do things that don't work, and that's just the nature of it. Sometimes you will do a sitcom and it won't work, and that's sort of but you have to go through those in order to get the real amazing one. Every single era, like if it's always funny to me when people go, "Oh, look, we had such great sitcoms in the past." It's like, yeah, and rubbish ones. It's just those ones aren't repeated anymore. You have to do a whole bunch of things to get the really good, to get the really good stuff. I really recommend Adrian Edmonton's book, Berserker, is very recent autobiography, because there's a chapter in that book about failure and about how in the writer's room and in the rehearsal room, you have to be comfortable failing, because like you will, in the writing process, you will say things that aren't funny, you will come up with stuff that isn't funny, but that's a stepping stone to the really good stuff. So you need to be able to fail, and I think that's a conversation we need to have as part of the wider industry as well. Like, so you do have to like make stuff, and some of that stuff won't be good, but you have to do that in order to make the good stuff. So I think, yeah, it's this risk, this absolute terror of taking a risk on a comedy that fails. So it just means that everything becomes quite safe. So we get a lot of panel shows, we get a lot of this kind of middling entertainment-y format. It's cheap. You only need one set. You can do 17 episodes just with the one set, and you can film 2 in a night, as opposed to it takes 2 weeks to film an episode. So it's cheap, and it does the job. It gets listed under comedy, and there you go, that's the comedy remit. But it's not sort of I would say high quality scripted comedy. When I think of comedy, and when I actually, so I'm ranting, but when you ask a person in the street, what's your favorite show that the BBC has ever done, it's got such a high probability that they will say a sitcom. And whenever, like, if you go on Reddit and there's one of those questions, like, what, you know, in Ask UK or in British TV, one of those subreddits where it's like, what's your favorite show of all time? The majority of them are sitcoms that people say. Even if it was just a really open question, they could say dramas and documentaries. Most people are saying sitcoms. This is they're this jewel that the BBC is incredibly good at. And they just don't make a whole lot of them anymore. But I think, sorry, to go back to your question, I think the time will come around. At the moment, sketch shows are not in vogue. At the moment, studio audience sitcoms are very, very much not in vogue. They felt out of date since the Royal Family and The Office came along in the early 2000s, and sort of suddenly the audience sitcom felt passé. And there's a few people who can still do it, but it's Upstart Crow. Ben Elton managed to get Upstart Crow over the line, and it's good. But it's such a rarity. It's such a rarity now. But I fully believe it'll come back around. I really do believe that these things come in cycles, and it'll come back around.
And you mentioned there about when people get asked about the favorite BBC program. I think the one sitcom they always say, and I think Gold's very good at trying to
Yeah.
make people think that they really like it, is Only Fools and Horses. Now, I have nothing against it. It's just I don't want to be sad. Like, sit at 9 a.m. watching one episode, and then at 9 p.m. watching the exact same episode again on the same day.
Yeah, yeah, it repeats,
Or
yeah.
I don't want to watch an episode that you've decided to split into two, and then you reshoot that again later on. I'd rather watch. That's why I've moved on from Gold. Well, I still like Gold, but I now watch Rewind TV because where else are you going to watch
Yeah.
a fine romance? Well, I don't know how many people want to watch that in the first place, but it's good enough. And I think it's like with everything, a lot of things like vinyls went out of date and then they're back.
Yeah, yeah.
Back, and I think that what works really well is a lot of things in the end come back. So they disappear for
Yeah.
years, and people are, oh, I remember that, and then they all decide, yeah, let's bring that back because I think if I use this word correctly, I hate it because I don't really understand it. But nostalgia, I think that everyone wants that feel. That's why a lot of programs are returning
Yeah.
and things are coming back. And with pilots, I think that what really doesn't work really well, in my opinion, is if I really like a pilot, it'll never get made. But if I don't like a pilot, it will get made. So I just used to not like TV because, like Beep, there was a program on BBC Scotland that was amazing. I reviewed it and everything because it was incredible, called Beep, which was supposed to be a sitcom
Right.
about people on life support. And it's like
Beep, right.
and it was like people come in, so the families come in and they just have an argument between each other because they've realised someone's been doing something they shouldn't have because their friends also their friend's relation is also on life support and they're about to die and they're trying to say, oh
That's
yeah,
a really good idea.
from
Yeah.
our side. And that was a one-off. There was a pilot because a lot of BBC Scotland and BBC Wales do a lot of pilots for things, and that never went
Yeah.
any further. But I thought it was the greatest thing ever, and my whole family
Yeah,
watched
lovely
it.
idea.
I was the only one laughing really loud because it was absolutely incredible. Because it's like, what a weird concept, but it was just because I liked it. They just never made any more of it. And then I didn't like Pete Prue or whatever it is, and then they made
Yeah,
two
Prue,
movies
yeah.
out of that. And I didn't quite like that. And I made it clear I didn't like it, but then they made it. So I just need to stop liking things, I think.
In Beep, that's really interesting. I'm gonna look that up. Was it like a bottle episode? Did it not leave the one, or did it cut around?
But
I'm
it was
curious.
a pilot who was trying to set up a whole series.
Okay,
And so the it was popular enough for them to release a script on the BBC script.
right. Yeah.
It's available for you to read the whole script, but it was just never popular
Oh,
enough
look.
to go any further. And it's a unique concept because I've never seen a sitcom about intensive care. But it was like one of those
Yeah.
private rooms where you go in where it's like one person's in the room and then there's other rooms with other people.
Yeah, that sounds really
It was
interesting.
like
Yeah.
will they won't they sort of between two characters that meet each other because they're both family members, are both on life support.
Right.
They might die at any moment. And it's
It's good.
a unique concept. I think more pilots need to like stretch out. Like Mammoth was a really good pilot and then became a really good series based off it. And do you reckon that a lot of pilots don't succeed because they're expensive, or do you reckon they don't succeed because some pilots like appear on radio first, and some pilots then get made on radio? Do you reckon that it's because it's like it might not work in that format?
It's so difficult to say, isn't it? So, I mean, years ago, I remember getting a script for a sitcom to audition as an actor, and the script was brilliant. And I remember it was a week I'd got two auditions for two different things, and one of the scripts was sort of fine, and this other script was really good. It's really, really strong. This will succeed. And I got this little part, and it was in 4 episodes. And then when it sort of came on the TV, it sort of it just did it that sort of spark that I'd read on the page hadn't 100% translated. It didn't get a second series, and I still can't put into words why it didn't quite work. There was just something missing. There was something that was there on the page. It was really exciting that just wasn't there on the screen. And by the way, the director was very good and a very, very experienced director. So they'd done their job very, very well. But it was just like this ephemeral sort of something that was missing. And it's really difficult to say, like, this is why this didn't work. I think it's sort of it is like a little bit of magic that sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. It's which is scary, right? Not being able to define it is scary. And I do totally get why producers balk at the idea of, oh, we're going to do this sitcom. It's really expensive. It's like 10 times the expense of a panel show, and it might not work, and we don't know why it will or won't work. I totally get why that's a really scary prospect, and you'd go, should we do this very cheap panel show instead? Yeah, let's definitely do. So I do get it. We can do a series of this panel show for the price of an episode of this sitcom. I do totally understand, but I do think you've got to. I don't know. I don't hold the purse strings, but so maybe if I did, I'd understand that fear a bit more. But from the outside, I just go, but yeah, but you got to take those chances, haven't you, to get to get the next Ghosts, to get the next really massive success that then gets franchised all around the world, like Ghosts has been. You need to take that chance. Anyway, I'm ranting.
And there was a before we move on, there was a BBC Wales pilot that came out at the same time as Mammoth that
Yeah.
that seemed really good, but it must have been a success somewhere because it never made it to TV, but it's now on. It's winning awards in radio because it starred. I'm not even. It starred. I'm gonna say her name. I'm gonna attempt to say her name for the first time ever. It's Mia. She was in Goodness Gracious Me. Miriam Cyan. I'm mispronouncing the name,
Oh,
but
Mira Sayal.
mispronouncing the name like it's no one does this. But she was
Mira Sayal.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. She was in this sitcom, and it was really good. But then now it's winning awards in radio.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
works
Yeah.
really well. And Alan Davis is still angry about whites being cancelled. He's
Yes, I remember Whites.
mentioned
Yeah.
it like the other day, and it was like saying this still annoys me in all capitals. And as we come towards the end of this interview, um, are you the type of person that when you're on TV or you're on the radio, do you sit down and watch and listen to it, or do you do what some people do and run as far away as possible that they'll never get to ever hear or see what they've done ever?
Do I don't watch myself. I can't stand watching things that I'm in. No. So I can't bear listening to it because I just see mistakes. That's all I just, or not mistakes, or like I should have done that better. I can't stand watching myself. So I steeled myself or stole myself. I don't know what the past tense of that is, and watched the Doctor Who Christmas special because I'm gonna watch. I like Doctor Who. I like it as a fan, so I definitely want to watch it. But a lot of the time, I can't bear watching myself because I can hear at the time I feel like, yeah, I'm really embodying this character. And then I'm watching myself just going, just being myself. This is just, that's all I can see is just me doing like, are you going to do the acting, Gemma? Like, I can't bear it. So yeah, I know I can't watch myself most of the time, or I would just choose not to. I'd rather, also, it's not relaxing watching yourself. If I'm trying to have a nice time watching some TV, I'd rather not myself. I'd rather I didn't pop up in it. So yeah, no, I can't bear it. The worst thing is when you audition for something and don't get it, and then you have to watch the show and you go, right, we're gonna find out who did get it then. So that puts a lot of
Yeah.
things off limits. You have to really be a grown up about it and go, okay, well, let's see who did it better than me then. But yeah, no, I try not to watch myself. It's not fun.
And I was an extra in a Channel 5 program called Toy Hospital, which is like the repair shop for toys.
Right, yeah.
Because you did it months ago, you sort of forget what you do. So,
Yeah.
so all I remember is the direct them saying, "Oh, you did really well," and then I'm in the trailer for the program. In the very first episode, I've got this kangaroo, and who knows why, but you just watch me just bung its nose. So it's like, and there's no relevance to it. It's just a kangaroo with bandages on him. I'm just banging his nose. I'm in the trailer. I'm in the I filmed we filmed one episode for a certain episode, and because they film close-ups, because you can use them in any episode, so it feels like a busy waiting room. I just appear just twice out of the blue. It's like,
It
what?
must have been a strong image, you
Yeah,
booping the nose of
yeah.
that kangaroo.
And then I'm in my episodes later on, and then you just see me just really rocking this thing like a baby. It's like
I
a
love that.
and you just question your sanity because I don't think I've got sanity in the first place anyway. And it's just You're just like, why on earth didn't you do that? And then you never delete it off your recording, so you can always remember the moment you were famous. Like you did 2 seconds of you had many episodes of fame, because then you have to watch the whole series to see if I'm in another episode. Because the episode I was in wasn't even my episode. It wasn't even the episode. I'm in it like later on in the series because I'm not even in that episode. It's like what the chances? And as we come towards the end of this interview, this is your opportunity to tell people where they can find you, but don't give away your home address. Where
No, that's a good point.
online can people track you down to see more of your witty, hilarious comments and all your witty
Lovely.
you get up to?
Best thing is to just go to my website. It's gemmaarrowsmith.com, and from there you can find my Twitter, or X as it is now. And and I just started a Substack literally last week where I want to talk about sort of the TV and radio industries. And that's called Idiot Box. You can find that by typing it in. And yeah, I my first post that I did last week, I talk about going to see the BBC, the old decrepit BBC studios at Alexandra Palace, because they do tours around there. So I went around the very studios where the first ever BBC program was made in 1936, the 2nd of November 1936, and where the Baird studio and the Marconi EMI studio battled it out for which one was going to get the BBC television contract. I was in those rooms and I did a whole Substack post. So you can go, if you put in Gemma Arrowsmith Idiot Box, I'm sure it will bring something up, but just go to my website, gemmaarrowsmith.com, and you'll find things from there.
And have you got any up and coming projects that you're allowed to talk about that you're excited for people to see/hear/read?
Yeah, well, let's see. I've just finished writing on a CBeebies show that has not been announced, but it will be soon. But that's with working with some brilliant people who we've already mentioned actually on this show, puppeteers and things. So that's I've written a couple of episodes of that, which will be coming out. So I can't say what it is, but that's happening soon. And yeah, I'm just working on a new live show for myself, so that will be announced soon. But yeah, check out my Twitter and website, and I'll be going on about that endlessly, I imagine, in the future.
And so there we have it. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Oh, a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It's been really fun talking about telly, my favourite subject.
And so there you have it, another wonderful interview. Now, as you know, I run 21 YouTube channels. Don't ask why, I just do. And so you'll find more antics and more interviews from me elsewhere. And you'll see just loads of antics. Such as, well, hopefully, if I eventually get it off the ground, you'll watch me get hit by a paintbrush, because I like the idea of being an art attack. Because you're being attacked by art. Because it's being hit with an object. And so basically I'm trying to take the mickey out of the art attack, because this is an art attack, you get hit with a paintbrush. This is an art attack, you get hit with a paintbrush. By the end of it, you've fainted on the ground because you've been hit too many times, and you're in agony because you've been hit with a really, really hard paintbrush. Will I regret filming that? Only time will tell. At the moment, it sounds like a good idea, but again, you regret it. So anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching, and remember, no, I've forgotten.